you all today to represent my North Carolina State University colleagues that comprise the VR Plants Initiative, as well as our collaborators at the North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences Naturalist Center. Yeah, go Pack. Together, we've built an Oculus Quest experience that allows museum visitors to interact with digitized botanical specimens in an intuitive and delightful way. We call this program the Naturalist's Workshop. I hope you've all had a chance to see our video presentation, which gives a really good look at the experience itself. If you haven't, that video is available on our VR Plants YouTube channel, and I'd encourage you to see the VR experiences documented there. Behind me, you see some stills from that gameplay video, all captured real time on the Oculus Quest standalone headset. The images show our player investigating various botanical specimens, receiving new information about these collections, like the inspection tray or the collection location 360-degree. Particularly exciting aspect of Naturalist Workshop is how precedent specimen digitization efforts are woven into the experience. Naturalist Center has previously contributed to herbarium specimen images to a digitization consortium called CIRNAC. So our team was able to optimize these pre-existing high-quality specimen images for use as textures within the Unity game engine's universal render pipeline. Naturalist Workshop showcases 13 distinct North Carolina native plant species that represent a cross-section of our state's distinct ecosystems. 3D scanned bulky plant material specimens to present alongside those pressed specimens for all 13 species. It's been a great pleasure working with Dr. Cindy Lincoln, Greg Scupian, and the rest of the museum staff who have such deep knowledge of their user base, collections, and their spaces. I believe this collaboration is a great example of how immersive media can breathe new life into existing collections, and I can't wait for those of you who have been unable to visit the museum itself to see the experience as we ready for a full publication later this year, downloadable on your own Oculus Quest. Thank you for your attention. I look forward to your questions on any aspects of our work in the Q&A. Thank you.
And thank you, Colin. I am not the world's best multitasker. If I can figure out how to find the video links and get them over to you, I'll put them here. In the meantime, you guys sitting in the audience, if you open your schedule, you should be able to go to the museum presentations and get the links there yourself. So there's not, unfortunately, we can't stream them in here and I don't have the links. So what I would like to do though, for, oh good, thank you. Thank you, Sophia. For the sake of getting through and being sure that everybody gets a chance to present their work, we'll go on to Diane and I will, sorry, Colin, I forgot to give your bio introduction. I do have Diane's. Diane, I will see if I can summarize what she sent me because I don't have it right in front of me right now. She is one of the librarians who really has jumped into using VR environments, 360 camera work, and she's very passionate about it, has done wonderful work already, and she'll be filling you in right now on some of what's going on, and I hope you have some good questions for her. So, Diane, I'm going to put my mic off, and it's all yours.
Okay, hi everyone. I suppose I could stand up. So my project is far less elaborate than a lot of the XR being discussed in most sessions at this conference. My intention was to basically inspire anyone who wants to make a modest kind of XR experience that's not too difficult to make. Sorry, just having a technical display issue here. Bear with me. That's not too difficult to make. And a 360 video tour is what my project is about. And when I'm done speaking, I'll put the link in the chat directly to my video speaking about my project, but the intention is that anyone with a little bit of equipment, access to a little bit of equipment or a little bit of funding and rental equipment can provide access to places that are not accessible to the public. So those might be sites of interest or places that might provide additional learning context. At this moment, we probably all have a lot of places on our campuses that are not accessible. And I'm talking about K-12 and higher education institutions. I happen to be at a small liberal arts college in a large university. But because of measures to reduce the spread of COVID-19, a lot of our actual physical spaces aren't open. So there's an opportunity to provide an immersive and engaging tour to make up for that sense of place that we're not getting in person possibly, or to recruit students, etc. So the video I created one modest learning objective, but it also just aimed to inspire increased interest in my library's archives and special collections. The word archives has many meanings, but the 360 virtual tour I created is of the meaning of archives, meaning the space where our archival documents, one-of-a-kind documents, photographs, and other artifacts are stored. Some of you may be familiar with archives as a space. For folks of a certain age, you might remember the last scene in the movie Raiders of the Lost Ark. It shows a view of aisles and aisles of dusty boxes of presumably one-of-a-kind artifacts and treasures. But our archives is a little more modest. So let me explain the learning outcome of my project quickly. So for us, when students or researchers request items from the archives, it's quite different than simply looking up a book or an ebook or journal articles online. Researchers and students have to look at what's called a finding aid, which is often new and complicated, that schema to look at. So finding aids are how archival, one-of-a-kind items are kind of cataloged and listed. Then those researchers have to fill out a request form to have those items retrieved by an archives or library staff member, because these aren't collections that are open to the public for lots of reasons. Some of them have a high monetary value, etc. So the researchers will have to identify many pieces of information when they request items, such as the name of the fond, F-O-N-D-S, which is an archival term I don't really have the time to define right now, may be familiar to some of you, and the name and the number of a box and the number of a file. So people who are new to this often neglect one of those details in their requests. So the modest learning objective is that my video hopefully adds some visual and contextual understanding as to how archival items and documents are organized and stored, and why those researchers need to include all that pesky information, all those details when they make a request. It also shows them a place that they can't go to and that their items are being retrieved from. Our archive space, in my opinion, happens to be also interesting looking, thankfully. My subjective opinion, it's got old style wrought iron shelving painted in a weird institutional pale green and glass floors. I think that was, it's a really old building, over 100 years old, so that the archives are within. So I think those glass floors were to let in light from the floor above and from windows before electrical lighting was as sophisticated as it is today. Seems funny to be talking about the sophistication of electrical items at an XR conference when we have much more sophisticated things. Anyway, that's my piece. I will stop talking and I will put the link to my video in the chat. Thank you. And thanks to iLRN for accepting my humble little project and letting me talk about it with you today.
And thank you very much, Diane. And Colin, since I neglected to put in your little bio, would you just give everybody a kind of snapshot of you and your team?
The VR Plants team is a collaboration from NC State's libraries and Department of Plant and Microbial Biology. Results from a grant that was written in the spring of 2018 to the American Society of Plant Biologists to take up WebXR collaborations to serve informal learning objectives for students in plant biology and the natural sciences. We've been really lucky to benefit from a strong XR campus culture at NC State that's tent-poled at the College of Design, the university libraries where I'm a staff member, and at the Delta remote learning infrastructure that's on campus. So we've beneficiaries of a lot of collaboration sources already.
Thank you very much. And I'm just back channeling with one of our supporters. Maria's having a little trouble getting in. And so, Sophia, let me just spend one moment there. But in the meantime, while I do some back channel work, could I ask, first of all, do the folks in the audience have a question they want to bring forward? I have a number of my own questions, but I think it's really up to you guys to either take the mic or put a question in the chat, and I will direct it myself if I don't see to whom directly it's going. But I think we have some commonalities here, so among the two. So let's see if you have any questions. And I see a question for Diane about, are you planning on doing other areas of the library?
Yeah, my bosses quite liked it. I think there's a lot of room for improvement in even just the archives tour. I would definitely like to make it more interactive. I mean, right off the bat, there's limitations with 360 videos and interactivity, as you're kind of stuck in the plane of vision that the video is captured at. But I want to add some branching logic so people can explore different collections. They can have some choices and then be in another 360 environment. And I really want people to watch this in a viewer. I think that's ideal to feel a little more immersive, but I'm kind of concerned about how people will feel about shared viewers in future. But for something like this, cardboard would work too. And everyone, it's not too expensive. So hopefully everyone could afford that, or maybe my institution would buy them and send those out. And then each person has their own. Sorry, I forgot to acknowledge my slide really focuses on the practical parts of it. So just trying to inspire that it's not too onerous to do a project like this. Also, you can see the picture of Lysol wipes there in the bottom left. If you didn't recognize it, that's representing my fear that I did all this, created this in December of 2019, and I'm not sure how many students will be willing to don that headset, even though we do clean them between people. And yeah, so other parts of the library, possibly. Librarians can be very protective of things. We have special collections different from our archives, and I'm wrapping up the answer, I promise. The special collections vaults they go through a process of being a special, I forget what it's called, designated repository or something. And there's actually rules about what we can and cannot show. So my chief librarian was a little nervous. I wasn't going to show the passcode for getting in or anything, but I think now that I made this little video of our older archive storage space, she's open to it. And I'd love to partner with other people on campus to show parts of buildings that aren't accessible to the public, like turrets of old buildings and things like that, if that could be done safely, just as an engagement piece, just kind of fun to get people interested in our college.
Thank you, Diane. And I would kind of like to pose part of your answer over to Colin as a question related to his work. Given that you've got kind of that physical component of their coming in and using equipment that's there at the school, do you see any challenges coming in right now in a COVID, or let's hope post-COVID world? And what would you think that you folks might do to adapt to those challenges?
Yeah, as someone who in my day job for the university libraries oversees a virtual reality studio that has about 1,000 visitors per semester. That's certainly the question that's been on my mind throughout this year, and I'm sure it's on a lot of our minds as people who have some degree of reliance on these really exciting pieces of technology. I think a conversation for our VR Plants team that has brought up that question is around demoing this program on the floor of the museum, the North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences, as was the original exhibition intention. And we have also been building out pop-up exhibitions within the NC State Library's Innovation Studio, a really exciting showcase space that will be opening within our building this fall. It's opening on schedule. And so that's a space where we're going to be showcasing our work in an exhibition. We plan to do several pop-ups there, and we've certainly had to adjust certain practices, best practices for dissemination of these experiences and for hosting people. We're looking towards distributing. I know we had a question earlier about the distribute of this experience. It is an APK. It is a downloadable program onto the Quest. So the distribution of how we are going to go to market, essentially, or go to platform with this free application has certainly been affected, where that's a much higher priority to us, that people can download this device for or this application for a device they're comfortable using, maybe in a non-public space more often. We do have tech lending available through our library, and that's certainly been invaluable to us to be able to put devices into the hands of people who don't own them. But yeah, these are considerations we've been having, and we're also excited about the introduction of hand controllers into standalone virtual reality, and we've incorporated that feature into our Quest app. But it does definitely take away some of the exhibition possibilities for something like what Diane was talking about with 360-degree video, where I think we've done some 360 video work ourselves with VR Plants, and instructors who that content has been made for sometimes even prefer it on a 2D screen, because it's so easy to have many of those running in a classroom, and that users may be comfortable with a tablet already. And so we are definitely excited by how 360 video translates to lots of different dissemination channels, but it's certainly hard with something that's as immersive as a Oculus Quest experience, right? So I think there are solutions. We're really excited about like 3D display environments, like the Looking Glass 3D display is something we're really fired up about, how that could translate VR content over. But yeah, I think it's a conversation we're really excited to hear other people's thoughts on too. Apologies for the long answer there.
I am enjoying the long answers, and I see there's a question in the chat from Garima S. about the response to this exercise. So I think that was related to Diane, but I think it could relate to both of you. So I'm thinking with your pilot group, Diane, do you want to take the mic for a minute, and then we'll put the mic over to Colin? Responses, I guess, from whatever group you've piloted with. Unless Charisma wants to take the mic and express the question again.
Sorry, forgot to unmute myself. I was talking just to myself here. The questions about the response to this exercise, I haven't methodically recorded it, but the students who have viewed it in the plastic viewers we have, a little bit higher quality than the cardboards, and those are also getting hard to find. So I want to comment on Pablo's comment in the chat also in a minute. The students who viewed it had positive feedback, but as I said, I didn't methodically record it yet, and I didn't measure whether they learned. I mean, we asked one question to the students who didn't view it in this class, that they do actually have to do research with archives, and it's by no means solid research measurement, but we asked them to fill out a form, and those who did do the view the 360 tour, we asked them to explain why they have to include all those details on a request form for archival items. And so another question on the form is whether they viewed the 360 tour or not, because not all of the students did. We just launched this, and it was an optional add-on to their class, and students are busy. We got about We also have small classes at my college, which is part of our branding. Small, more seminar type classes, but we got about 15 students, and I think there's 22 in the class. So they came before class in their own time, and they had good things to say. And while they were watching it, like maybe they were just being polite and nice to us, but while they were watching it, they were saying like, "Wow." And they really seem to like the artifacts, which are not the things they need to use for research, like items. Like we have an old mace, like kings would carry, like a stick with a big thing on top. Anyway, I don't know how else to describe a mace. And I think my sound is cutting out.
I'm hearing you very clearly.
Okay, I was getting the feedback that it's cutting out. Okay, so I'll wrap it up, but to say that yeah, I'm finding like maybe I just got on this too late, you know, the bandwagon had already like sped by because it's getting harder to find inexpensive mobile VR viewers. And I get it, this technology is evolving. Maybe I really love the idea of caves and collaborative VR, but this is what I have access to. And yeah, Pablo mentioned that Google's phased out the Google Cardboard technology. It's open source, keep using it. Yeah, I just like it as a mechanism, and posting 360 videos on YouTube is fine. But if I do what I'd like to do and make it more interactive, it will have to be hosted elsewhere. And I'm not sure how people will view it. But as Colin mentioned, you know, some people prefer the desktop VR. I've been attending this entire conference not in wearing a headset, and it's been fun. So I like the immersive element because I like how there's no distractions, and it does make you feel a little bit like you're there, even though people will argue that 360 videos aren't VR. I do think they take you to a different scene, and especially viewed through a viewer, to me, that is creating another reality. Debatable. I completely am aware and would confess of all the limitations there and lack of interactivity, but I hope that answered the question. I'll stop talking now to give someone else a chance.
Colin, how about you addressing the question? And it looks like we can get Maria in. She'll be coming in through a sidebar in just a few moments. But Colin, do you have a perspective on that too, from what your work is? And
yeah,
what are you finding?
Whole lot of echoing Diane's thoughts on that. Actually, we are also big fans of the Google Cardboard viewer. I don't think it's been end of life as much as it's been open source. There are outfits where you can buy pretty affordable Google Cardboards still, but yeah, they're definitely a little bit less discoverable than they were just a few years ago. I'd agree. From the library's perspective, our VR Plants team has actually disseminated about 200 cardboard viewers through our workshop series and our presence at some local festivals and education series. And we find them to be a great return on investment, that you're paying a couple of bucks to put a device in people's hands that will be used for other experiences, as well as the one that you've introduced them to. The fact that these can be branded, they're better than a business card. And with the number of those that we hand out, we'd rather be handing out cardboards, essentially. Our libraries will be sending at least 100 Google Cardboards out to students in courses dealing with web VR and these kinds of 360 low hardware requirement viewers for coursework this year. So we're still very excited about Google Cardboard, I think. And the fact that it feels a little bit more disposable might be very convenient for the times we're living in. I also, talking just about the reception to our experience, I would say that I think we got very lucky, and I'm very proud of the way that our team was able to have a Oculus Quest app developed by the fall of 2019 after that device was introduced to market really late spring, early summer, if I remember correctly. And we really, that hard work really paid off for us, in that we were able to get some trials actually out in the museum with museum visitor populations that aren't as present on a university campus, right? Very young people, grade school student age people, and being able to get a lot of their thoughts and their feedback through our showcase at the museum's Darwin Day event was really valuable to us in being able to kind of move this to what we consider to be its final form here. So we felt very lucky in that way.
and it's Eileen here. I'm being the moderator. I don't want to take up too much time, but I come in from K-12, or that's a big part of the student population that I have. I have adult learners coming in 100% online. We don't have the luxury of headsets, and many K-12 don't. And having the cardboard is nice, but then your cell phone heats up. So that I personally like as many things that can be displayed 3D, 2D, or whatever, 2D, 3D. I've been involved in immersive environments right now. I'm watching this flat screen, but I'm getting what's called telepresence. And that's what you want. You want them to get engaged in something that's outside of themselves. I would love to see the exotic buildings that Diane has. And I was enjoying going to the environments themselves that Colin showed in his 360 videos. So I think exotic is nice. Collaboration is nice. The other pieces are good, but it's very often in the populations that I'm trying to get into, the things that provide the rich context are what will help the teachers most immediately move on, and they embed them in a lot other contexts themselves. So no teacher is just going to show something. They're going to have it as part of a lesson. And I would encourage you, Google Expeditions is a great way to upload 360 work that you've done, which you could then tag over to some of your other work, and schools could use that right away. So please, I think that non-headset work to me is the most accessible, to get your content out. So I will get off my bully pulpit because I like it the more you make these things available in easy ways. So what I'm going to do now is send a note over to Sophia, and we are ready. We have one of our presenters coming in, Maria Harrington, and I think she will be coming in now to give her overview, and then we'll network her into the conversation. And so I'm going to turn my mic off, and if it takes too long, I'll pop back in. But Sophia was going to try to help us get Maria in on one of these screens.
Yeah.
So just bear with us.
Yep. So hi, everybody. I'm going to be sharing my screen, and Maria's on a Zoom call with me right now. So hopefully this works. Can I take over the main screen? Is that okay?
Sure. Do I need to do something for you to do that?
Nope. I can just do it myself.
Okay. Yes, please do.
Did you actually happen to take ownership of the screen?
Yes, I did. So do I have to release that?
Yes, you do.
Okay. All right. Okie dokie. Take ownership, remove ownership. Okay. Should be all yours now.
Okay, perfect. All right, okay. All right, we can see Maria up here. I'm going to full screen her so everyone can see. And I'm actually going to just hold the cats up this way for people to ask questions. Okay, can everyone hear Maria if she speaks? Hi, Maria, can you say something real quick? No.
Does she have the two options in Zoom connected? Share computer sound? Does that help? Or do you? You're sharing your screen.
I can hear her just fine.
But it's coming through the computer sound. So when you hit share screen, there's the bottom checkbox.
Let me make sure that the sound settings are correct.
And can everybody in the audience toggle off their mics for the moment?
Yeah, so
Okay, I'd like to ask if everybody could type in the chat or put up one of those emotion things if you've seen a chunk of the video. We don't want to take the time watching the whole thing. You can see that later, but have you been able to get a perspective on what Maria's doing?
yes,
Okay.
perfect. Okay, so if people want to start asking questions, we can get started with the flipped Q&A.
I'm sure, especially if you see the whole thing, you will be inspired, but questions from the group, I have a few myself, but we'd rather hear from you.
Okay, a question from Jewel Kruger is, how exactly did you measure perceived learning? How did you measure it? Okay, a 7-point Likert scale survey that was perceived. Okay, but the actual learning was measured with a pre-test and a post-test. Test was identical. Questions about facts and concepts. And it was graded.
And I think too, when you get to see all of Maria's video, you'll get a chance to get some of those questions resolved a little in more depth. Other questions for Maria?
Yeah.
We're
Okay,
doing the relay,
like
but it's working.
some more questions coming in. Okay, were there hotspots or triggers in the dioramas? If yes, what kind of overlaid imagery sound appeared? Okay, no, it was a virtual environment that represented the natural world. Okay, every plant was an object potential for inquiry. More questions?
Actually, it's Eileen. I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
One of the things, I was able to look at the whole video, and Maria had mentioned a story. And I personally feel that's an important concept in any of these pieces. You know, we're looking at technology kind of as an abstraction, as a tool. But she talked about they would get kind of involved in the story, and it wasn't explicated. So I'm wondering, could you talk a little bit about the story or the motivation that you applied to the scenario? And then I would like to ask our other speakers about the same thing too when Maria's answered that, because I think that's a challenge I think we all have when we're designing things. So how do you get that imagination going, that sense of story or curriculum? So what did you do in your case to get them involved in a story?
Yeah, okay, I'm going to ask her that right now. Okay, so the story came from the design of the app, and it increased engagement because when someone saw an object, they were able to click on that object and then they were able to learn the story of that. One story.
But what does she mean? What's the story of an object? I think you could see the botanicals growing. So was it the science story, or was it a personification of the object? Talk a little bit about what that was.
Yeah, so it was one museum curator's like entire story that they could learn about it within the diorama. I'm sorry, it's hard to listen to all of this. Much more difficult than I thought to relay long answers. But yeah, so it's one massive storyline. Yeah, so it's a museum curator's narrative about that diorama that would engage the learners.
Okay, thank you. And Sophia, you did a great job. And a little history, my father-in-law was a producer for NBC back in the time of live TV. And you would be hired. You did a great job. Okay. So Sophia and everybody, thank you for chiming in. But I'd like to pose my question about story to our other folks in the our presenters, because I'm wondering right now, as museum people, that's maybe not your full emphasis. My understanding is then, from what Maria said, if you went into the museum, you would see the dioramas, and so the individual running the diorama as kind of a museum curator would have a story there. But Colin, how do you see helping out people coming in with a kind of a story aspect or a curriculum? Could you see if maybe that might work, how you would address that with the work you've done?
Yeah, I'll answer this really quickly because I'm very curious to get Diane's answer on it with the idea of moving video through spaces that have so much kind of storytelling sort of ambient within them. I'm really curious to hear her thoughts. But we thought about what immersive media does well and what XR does well and hand controllers, what that allows. And it's spatial exploration of kind of near field interaction, you know, the trying to find something that's lost in the kitchen in going through all the drawers and all the cabinets and everything is like a very is the kind of interaction with the world that XR makes very compelling, in our opinion. And so we kind of went for that. We drawers feature really prominently in our experience. You're filing through drawers, seeing what's in the next one, asking questions about the strange things you're finding, like you would in an archive space or something like that. So we really pursued that as kind of the protagonist-driven story, as a story of exploring a small space. But Diane, I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on that too.
Thanks, Colin. We definitely have lots to talk about. I think your experience wins hands down in terms of being able to fully explore a space because, as you all probably know, you can't really choose what interactions you have in a 360 video. You can choose where you look. And I think the affordances of true VR, like if I manage to convince my bosses this is worth pursuing further, you better believe I'm going to get some students creating something in, Unreal Engine and Unity that's more interactive. But I've just started kind of turning them on to this. I'm at a pretty traditional institution. Anyhow, I was thinking, even with my wanting to add some interactivity, easier project through something like, I think there was someone here earlier that mentioned ThingLink, and there's a couple others. I would still have to choose hands that would be grabbing a box or whatever, or maybe I would avoid that entirely, because I also care about people feeling represented. So if you think of VR experiences that are well designed and have, like, you get to choose the color of your skin for the hands that appear, whatever, maybe we could get around that by having long, old, like Downton Abbey style gloves or something. I don't know, but or archivist gloves and long sleeves. Yeah, it's limiting, but we move through the space. It is a guided tour, and I forget what the term someone used, but something about narrative. That's a little trickier. I'll try to wrap this up. I just got a sense that I'm going on and on. But we walk people through the aisles, and I'm really worried about that, making people feel motion sick or anything, and they're not controlling. They can look around while it's moving, but it might be a bit too much. But our archivist, who was my kind, generous, and willing actor and guide in the video, is really graceful in her movements, and I use stabilization. This is explained in my project video, by the way. But I don't think it was too motion sickness inducing, but who knows? Everybody's got different sensitivities. But yeah, the viewer doesn't have a lot of agency, frankly. We take them to where we want them to look, and once they're there, they can look around at something else, but we're definitely talking about a central point of interest. That's all I have to say to give others a chance.
Now I'm seeing more in the chat, allowing, where they're kind of reinforcing, Mitch is reinforcing that allowing a teacher to grab and draw and put in voiceover quickly is powerful. I think the realism is not as essential as the engagement. With all of, I'm sure, museums as well as education, it's about getting the viewer, the client, the students involved in what our immersions represent. And if you can do that through haptics, through tactile, that's fine. But you can do it mentally. We've all been engaged in movies. We feel like we're in the movie, and we don't have headsets on. We're not directly interactive, although I know they're trying to do more of that. So I think that don't overlook what you already are doing. And I would love to be able to get 360s of many other places. So I will see the data. And please, would our speaker just take the mic? They want to add to the conversation here. We've got another 5 minutes or so.
I don't know if anyone else wanted to jump in, but I'm hoping that Maria is still connected to us, because I just wanted to acknowledge, I liked that with her experience, holding an iPad gives you this kind of magic window, and the viewers were moving around the elements of the diorama, and I thought that was kind of great. The younger viewers seem to be really into it, and you see them moving around in her video. So just to say and to acknowledge, thanks, Eileen, it's still a worthwhile experience. But, within the continuum, there are limitations to the different mediums. So it really depends what's important to you, I guess, for the learning or the promotional aspect. Sorry, I'm done speaking, if anyone wants to add on.
Questions from the audience for this group, for our wonderful speakers? I'm afraid we can't interact with Maria because we've kind of cut that communication. She can't get in through the VirBELA. So, but I know that she has I think she has her email. No, I know she has her email. I keep on reminding you, go back to the schedule. There's all the links to the videos, and the emails are within the videos. They're probably in other places too, but do keep up with people. But how about some more questions from the audience about, we still have our speakers here?
while we solicit those questions, I'd love to answer the question from Anil. What data is captured by default that was useful with the platforms you used? We worked within the Unity game development engine, and I think those of you familiar with the kind of strength of that suite of tools, the horizons are kind of the limit there in terms of what you data capture kind of looks like for the specifics of your setup. So I want to answer that from a bit of a different angle and talk about the data that was available to us by default as by virtue of their inclusion in metadata collections and in pre-existing digitization efforts that have really swept through biological sciences and through archives in general in the last decade or so, and just advocate for the utilization of these pre-existing resources that in many cases are already open. And so some of the data that we inherited by using or by kind of standing on the shoulders of giants there have to do with specimen collection locations for specimens that were collected, 70 years ago, 80 years ago in some cases. And the ability, the fact that that specimen is still even there means that something could have grown on a branch, fallen, been collected, and then 70 years later be digitized and put into a virtual space. I think that's something that we're inheriting and benefiting quite a bit from. I don't know if Diane also has an answer for some data that was available that was particularly beneficial.
No, I don't have any data except for anecdotal reactions of people viewing the video. But yeah, I don't know, check back with me in a year. Hopefully the project has evolved and is on a platform that can kind of capture how much time people spend in different areas and whatever. But I think if I'm understanding, Colin, you were talking about were you talking about linking it to the data, kind of metadata about the objects being represented? And by the way, I love the look of your VR experience, especially that kind of old style camping lantern, if I may say.
Thank you. Yeah, our undergraduate 3D modeling technician was very proud of that lamp and the emissive shader that's on the lamp to kind of throw some seemingly dynamic light towards the specimens. It really encourages you to pick it up. And he had a folder full of, or an inspiration board of mid-century archives and herbaria that he referred back to constantly for a lot of that design. So I'm sure he'll be very happy to hear that from someone who's very familiar with archives.
Any other questions, comments from the audience? Anyone want to take the mic? I know we're reaching the end of our time, and I would like to thank our presenters and also really big shout out to Sophia for helping Maria to get in, and I'm sorry she couldn't make it. Please do consider filling in the evaluations. And Sophia, if you have that link, if you could put that in the chat, but if not, you do get reminders through email, at least I do, about the evaluations, helpful feedback. But thank you all. It's been a real treat. Oh, okay, here comes the link.
Can I chime in quickly, Eileen? And just say thank you so much for chairing and reaching out to us so that you could introduce us with a bio. That was very thoughtful, much appreciated. And also, this is being videoed, I believe, because there is an avatar in the room that shows as a camera crew. So if you go back to the place in the schedule, and Maria can do this too, and see maybe what was said about her project. There's a video of this session there, I think. Thanks, Eileen.
Thank you, everyone. And I certainly intend to go back to the archives later and use them for a lot of my work. So I'm hoping that everything is archived.
Yeah, thank you so much, Eileen and Sophia, and all our attendees.
Yeah. Thank you, Diane. Thank you, Colin, and thank all of your colleagues and coworkers. And Sophia, she has been on her feet, her virtual feet. Oh my goodness, I've been communicating with her since Wednesday or Thursday of last week. So
let's all clap for Sophia.
Yeah.
Oh,
and yes, a big clap for everybody. I think she deserves a dance. I don't know. And too bad they don't have drinks that you can get here, but she deserves that too. And for all of you, this conference has been a real good experience for me, and thank you all for participating. I will say goodbye, and thank you to our wonderful speakers and our facilitators, and to iLRN.
Thank you, Eileen, and all the presenters and everyone so much for your patience in working with Maria.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye.